The Arizona Constitution establishes a limit on the amount of property taxes that can be levied in any year. Based on a flat tax rate, the proposed levy of $605 million is $140.5 million below our maximum levy of $745.6 million.
And on this slide, Cindy, what does that compare to other local governments around Arizona? I mean, is that pretty common to see, body having that much left over of levy that we could impose that we're not doing?
Mr. Chairman, I believe many counties across the state are at their maximum levy, so they don't even have the ability to tax above to even meet their needs. So I think we are unique in this situation. And then as a reminder, the county property taxes in fiscal year 19 are only 11.27% of all property taxes that are levied. We will update this graphic once all property taxes are determined sometime in August when you have the property tax rate setting and levy establishment. Although we've been in an expansion for 119 months, the rate of growth of our revenue sources, other than our property taxes, has not mirrored that of previous expansion. As illustrated in this graph, the largest increase we saw in state shared sales tax was 7.4% growth, and that was back in fiscal year 15. In other expansions, the increases reached the 10 and 15% levels. However, after those expansions, we had really steep declines. So what we can hope for is that any decline that we see won't be as dramatic as it was in the past.
Is there a question?
Yes.
So what is that, do you think, Cindy, you've been around doing this for a while, what is the reason for that? That it seems to be on a downward slope?
I think, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Hickman, I think we are starting to see the end of the recovery. So on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've seen in the past several months, and it seems to be trending downward. So in my impression, it's the sign of what's yet to come.
Okay.
So other than property taxes, our operating revenues are our state share sales tax, the vehicle license tax, and the jail excise tax. That's our detention tax. As we mentioned earlier, the budget's based on the most likely revenue forecast, which would assume a 50% chance of meeting these revenues. We've based our budget based on that. There would be a 4 to 4.5% increase over the forecasted level for fiscal year 19. However, what we've seen in the most recent months in all three of these revenue categories was a decline to about 3.5% for our jail tax. 3.5% for sales tax increase year over year, 2.5% for our jail tax, and actually year over year in April, the vehicle license tax was down 0.4%. So I think we're starting to see that leveling off. If there's a shock to the economy, our revenue expectations may not be met. As is the case each year, the county continues to be required to fund costs not directly within its control. The largest of these costs are payments to the state for mandated health care costs. They're going to total at this point, I should say, they're going to total $264 million for fiscal year 2020. That includes $18.1 million for access, $179.8 million for the Arizona long-term care system, and $66.1 million for our Arnold B. SARM payment to the state. That equals about 17.8% of our total general fund operating budget, so it's a pretty big slice. In addition to the general fund operating budget will be burdened with two other costs, a $6.7 million payment for juvenile corrections and about a $3 million payment to the Department of Revenue. So that is about 0.7%. So combine that with our health care payment costs, and we're looking at about 18.5% of our general fund operating budget going to the state of Arizona. We do want to commend, though, our government relations staff.
Yes, Supervisor Sellers.
Based on what we know of the budget today, or?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Supervisor Sellers, this is based on what the baseline budget was. We are the understanding that there might be an additional increase to the long-term care payment. That could be about a $6 million hit to the budget. That's not currently built into our budget and a recommendation. We want to commend our government relations staff, though, because they continue to do a fantastic job to try to relieve us of our current impacts and then ward off any future impacts, such as the increase to the all tax payment.
Agreed.
So speaking of that, we're keeping a watchful eye of things that are happening down at the state. I understand the state's slated to release their budget today. But there are some...
Budget day, I guess, huh?
Doesn't necessarily mean they have 3116, but they're releasing something.
So we are keeping an eye on some of the things that are happening down there. One area that we looked at was the valuation of solar panels. So if that valuation basis changes, we would be getting less property tax. We would estimate that to be about $1.7 million. The second area that we're looking at is the state shared sales tax and our jail excise tax associated with data center equipment. If that bill would pass, it would be about a $2.2 million hit to those combined revenue sources. A bill has already passed, which will require the county to mail out all tax bills. That will be about another $500,000 cost to the county to enact that. And then, as we mentioned, the state is considering increasing the rates for the all tax providers by $20 million. So counties share equally, so that would be about $10 million for all counties. Our share would be between $6 and $7 million of that $10 million.
Is that based on population?
It's based on, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Hickman, I believe it's based on utilization of the services.
Okay.
And then finally, outside of the legislature, the AOC is considering eliminating a civil subpoena filing fee, and if that were to happen, the general fund does receive part of that funding, as do several special revenue funds. It would be about a $200,000 impact to the general fund. Before we get into the specific department budgets, we would like to look at some things that are countywide. So these have impacted every department budget, so we won't be talking about them on each of the department slides. The first is the retirement increase. So the net impact of all the retirement rate changes for fiscal year 20 in the general detention funds is about $1.3 million. This is a much lower number than it had been in the past. For our telecommunications and radio charges, it's about $1.4 million for the general detention fund departments, and risk management charges for those same departments are $230,000. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Myra, and she's going to start going over the department highlights.
New facilities will be opening during fiscal year 20 with impacts to several departments. Therefore, contingencies for the annualization of operational costs have been set aside. The remaining operational costs for these facilities are included in the departmental budgets to be discussed in later slides. The new court at Maryville will require additional resources. Specifically, Superior Court will require 8 positions at $541,000, the county attorney 4.5 positions at $605,000, and public defense services 7 positions at $652,000. These departments will also require one-time startup costs of $386,000, $119,000, and $107,000 respectively. For the new ITR, $2 million have been set aside, as the initial appearance court will require presence from the Superior Court security and the Sheriff's Office law enforcement. In addition, $6.7 million of funding for the new MCSO detention staff is in contingency pending a staffing analysis. The annualized cost for facilities management staff and operational costs of $830,000 have also been set aside. Finally, the additional contingencies are available for annualized costs for the new staff allocated to the opening of the county attorney's office at 225 West Madison.
Supervisor Hickman had a question,
So
sorry.
a quick question on the ITR, the bullet point 2 about the ITR detention staffing. Where do you guys have knowledge of where we're at right now? I know that we're currently a little bit short on positions to be filled. Have you gotten the amount where we're at right now? How many people are we short still?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Hickman, I believe there are about 300 vacant positions currently, for detention officer positions currently in the detention fund without establishing any new positions. And I believe there's, I want to say maybe 40 people in the academy. That number, we'll get you that exact number, but It's between 40 and 50 people that are in the academy.
And so we project the opening, Joy, maybe you know, we project the opening of the ITR at what point?
After the first of the year. It'll be done in November, correct, Reed? There'll be a burn period.
Spring? So we have 300 yet to fill, and we have 40 in the academy. So that's 260 short right now. Okay.
Can we sign you up?
I'm thinking, how much is that paying? Maybe I need a third job. Okay. Sorry.
No. Additional contingencies are available for the annualized cost for new staff allocated for the opening of the county attorney's office at 225 West Madison. These include 6 positions for the county attorney at $136,000, 5 superior court positions at the Skybridge entrance for $100,000, and facilities operating and staffing costs of $822,000. The Sheriff's Office Detention Fund operating budget is recommended at $217.1 million, which is a 0.2 or $434,000 increase. The decrease is mostly due to base retirement contributions. Included in the budget is 1.7 of internal resource realignments to support additional staff for the ITR. There's also a net change to personnel and benefits, excluding base retirement, of negative $1.9 million, and a net change to supplies and services of $160,000. One-time funding is also recommended for new intake release facility items of $1.2 million and other non-recurring items in the amount of $2 million. The Sheriff's Office General Fund operating budget is recommended at $128.8 million, which is a 1.8% or $2.2 million increase. The increase is due to base retirement contributions and telecom charges. Included in the budget is $125,000 for expansion of the recruitment campaign, $122,000 for 2 new property and evidence custodians, $157,000 for aviation training, $726,000 for reallocation of RICO costs to the general fund, negative $458,000 for reallocation of funding to compliance, a net change to personnel and benefits excluding base retirement of negative $1 million, and a net change to supplies and services of $61,000. One-time funding is also recommended for a helicopter purchase of $10.8 million that has been set aside in contingency, and other non-recurring items of $1.4 million.
Yes, Supervisor Hickman.
Bullet point 1 on the expansion of the recruitment campaign for 120. I've seen the billboards driving down I-10. So we've gone into a recruitment campaign, and now we're going to go expand it into the second. How did the first, has there been anything from the Sheriff's Department saying how well that has enticed people to come to the Sheriff's Department before we start expanding this program, or do we just vote for it?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Hickman, I don't have that information, but I will be happy to get that for you. I don't have anything back from them as far as their success in their current campaign.
Okay. And
They had a commercial.
they had a commercial?
On the radio, I heard it.
Well, I mean, it's a tight labor market. I mean, given the Sheriff's Department and trying to entice new workers, I do understand that. I just want to make sure any type of campaigns that we're doing are being effective before we expand them again. So I am very happy to hear that there's 40 people in the academy, but we're going to be opening up a place. So that's not, I'm sitting there looking at you, Cindy and Joy, but it's, I'm sure the restaurant industry will say it's extremely hard to find people.
Everything's great in the restaurant industry. Great food for everybody.
But anyway, just wanted to find out if they're trying to meet some standard. So on that one, and then the one-time funding, the contingency for the helicopter purchase. If we do replace, what is that, Fox 1 or Fox 2? I get the Fox's numbers mess me up, but I believe we're concerned that Fox 1 is not doing the job that we need to get done with. So we are going to possibly purchase a new helicopter, or it looks like we're going to be purchasing a new helicopter. what happens to the old helicopter? Is that a replacement, or have we heard? Are they trading that in?
Hickman, yes, it is a replacement. That's been confirmed by the sheriff's office.
So will the old helicopter be going towards
Trade-in,
that?
you mean? Like a
Yeah,
trade-in,
well,
yeah.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Hickman, I'm not sure that it can be sold per se, but I think there probably is some salvage value to some of the parts. I believe it can be cannibalized for parts, that sort of. I don't know that it is going to be sold in its entirety, though. We can ask them about that.
Okay. I just wonder about the maintenance. If we decide to buy one and then, well, we have that one and we're not going to get much for it, so might as well keep it, then it still has a maintenance cost to an older piece of equipment. So I just wanted to know their plans for that.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Hickman, it will be decommissioned.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, just to piggyback on Supervisor Hickman's, I mean, the issue of retaining and recruiting, it's a challenge that I think all governmental agencies, including the private sector, is dealing with. So I think we have to, as we move forward through not only this budget, but future budgets, keep that in mind. And, you know, what are we doing as a county to retain and even recruit? I mean, and I now have the opportunity to wear my school board hat, and that's a discussion we have at the school district. How do we recruit teachers to come to Phoenix Union and teach in our schools? So it's a challenge. So it's not just the sheriff's office when it comes to recruiting new deputies and detention officers, but it's across the board. So there's a portion in here that we'll get to that I'm really satisfied with, but it's something that we just have to keep in our mind.
Yeah, and Supervisor Gallardo, I agree with that. I think money is always part of that when you're talking about recruitment. There's other things too.
Yeah.
And I want to, congratulate you on the work you've done too, as it relates to, especially as we have folks from the millennial generation coming on board. It isn't always about the money. It's about being part of a bigger thing, being part of a larger mission. And I think that you're doing a really good job with the team and working through the organization to emphasize other things, getting involved in the community, things of that sort. But you're absolutely right? We're looking at the lowest unemployment rates in 50 years. So it's a good challenge to have, but it's a challenge we're having at all levels of the county. Supervisor Sellers.
And I guess just a general comment in that same realm. We've had discussions, and I know that one of our priorities for this year was a targeted employee compensation strategy. I know that our discussions, we've talked about not only difficulty in recruitment, but a high level of turnover, and that has to be costly. So hopefully somewhere as we address these budgets, we're going to be looking at that.
Good point. Anything further?
The Sheriff's Office General Fund Compliance operating budget is recommended at $24.8 million, and that is a 3.7% or $874,000 increase. The increase is due to base retirement contributions and reallocations from the operating budget. Specifically, $458,000 was reallocated from the operating budget for management assistant positions of $133,000, investigator positions of $234,000, website contract management of $11,000, and net change to personnel and benefits, not including retirement, of $80,000. This slide shows the total Melandra's cost over the years. From 2008 to 2013, costs were $1.5 million. In 2014, $4.1 million. 15, they increased to $21.9 million. In 2016, they decreased back down to 18.7. In 2017, 23.7 million. 2018 costs were 23.9. And the 2019 costs are forecasted at $26.2 million. The 2020 budget is recommended for $31.2 million. Total costs for these 13 years are $151 million. As shown in the smaller chart on the upper left-hand corner, the top three costs for the Melandra's judgment order have been spent within the Sheriff's Office for $108.7 million, monitoring related costs of $21.2 million, and the plaintiff's attorneys for $10.4 million.
That's it?
Give him time.
One of 3 helicopters.
County Attorney General Fund operating budget is recommended at $98.6 million, which is a 4.9% or $4.5 million increase. Included are investigator retirement adjustments of $583,000, 8 new attorney positions at $687,000, 11 data entry redaction team positions for $506,000, 7 IT administrative and detective positions for $622,000, 6 positions for the 225 West Madison operating and move costs for $194,000, shift to special revenue fund expenditures of $484,000, supplies and services increases of $827,000, and transcription and translation shifts of $339,000. The public defense system general fund operating budget is recommended at $133.4 million, which is a less than 1% or $154,000 increase. The increase is mostly due to base retirement contributions. Included in the budget is a transcription and translation reallocation of $250,000 from the county managers and non-departmental budgets. The general fund non-recurring PCR budget includes capital post-conviction relief backlog of $1.8 million. Also recommended in the general fund is $3.4 million of operating contingency for anticipated caseload growth and $618,000 in non-recurring contingencies.
So adult probation, their budget is recommended at $63.7 million. There's an adjustment of $114,000 for their personnel budget. And beyond that, I don't know if you remember, but in fiscal year 19, we had contingency set aside $812,000 for 10 positions and $27,000 for vehicles, pending a staffing study. I believe that staffing study is winding down, so we should know shortly. And once we get that recommendation, we would bring an action to you to reappropriate those funds from contingency to the adult probation if warranted. On the detention side, their budget in adult probation is $39.2 million. Again, that includes $444,000 worth of personnel adjustments, and they also had a contingency for 9 positions in detention pending that staffing study. Juvenile probation budget is relatively flat on the general fund at $20.3 million. Their detention fund budget is at $37.3 million. That did include some changes for overtime pay at $262,000 and a personnel adjustment of $502,000. Beyond that, there is a one-time appropriation for juvenile probation in detention, $100,000 for radio replacement, and $1.5 million for camera replacement system at the Durango Juvenile Detention Facility. The Superior Court's general fund budget is at $92.8 million and includes 2 new positions for the civil position of the civil division. It also includes 5 positions for the Skybridge security for 6 months at $114,000. There are IT agreements for $685,000. 1 new position in the area of probate at $70,000. They had a net adjustment to their personnel budget of $494,000. There were reduction in fill the gap funding of $510,000, so those costs came back to the general fund, and that was offset by some reductions to supplies and services of $535,000. In addition to that, there's funding recommended for $2.8 million of technology improvements. This includes $1.3 million for their implementation of Office 365. There's hardware and software updates of $1 million and $410,000 for an operational review in their IT area. There's $95,000 for new equipment for the Skybridge entrance from the county attorney's 225 building, and then $3.8 million is recommended to refresh the in-court recording system that's currently known as For the Record. The clerk of the court operating expenditure budget is flat at $36.4 million. Their revenue, though, is increasing by $500,000. And we also wanted to congratulate them. During fiscal year 19, they completed the RFR system updates, so that's been in the process for several years, and it is completed now. Our constable's operating budget is at $3.8 million. This is a slight decrease of about $155,000, and this is due to several new constables coming on board where their salaries are less than the people who preceded them. Justice Court's recommended budget is $20.4 million, which is relatively flat, and as you can see, their caseload volume is also remaining relatively stable. The assessor was one of our zero-based budget departments. Their budget is increasing by $307,000, and this is for 6 months of software maintenance for their new MARS system. So that will get annualized then in fiscal year 21. In addition to that, we're adding to the operating budget their legal class verification program. So that's the program where they make sure that properties are properly classified as residential or rental properties, because the valuation is different between the two. The Recorder's Office, their general fund budget is recommended at $5.5 million, and it includes 3 new positions: a public records custodian, a constituent correspondent, and a new GIS programmer. That increase totaled $238,000. In addition, they are carrying forward $45,000 of funding they received in fiscal year 19 to complete their data indexing project. In their surcharge fund, the operating budget is recommended at $3.7 million, and there's also a non-recurring appropriation of $667,000. $631,000 of that is for servers, and $36,000 is for new plotters. The elections operating budget is recommended at $7.1 million. This includes one increase of $241,000, and that is for software maintenance for the site books that were purchased back in fiscal year 2018. Beyond that, there's $6.1 million recommended for the election cycle funding. So the PPE election is going to be occurring during next fiscal year. So for that and other elections that would be occurring during the year, there's $6.1 million set aside. And then beyond that, we do have operating and non-recurring contingencies set aside for equipment, operational needs, and staffing costs. We have about $3 million set aside for the equivalent of what would be 31 positions and other software and IT needs on our operating side. And then on the non-recurring side, we have about $5.7 million in contingency, $5 million for potential change to this tabulations equipment, and then $727,000 for other IT equipment.
So what's that total number then, Cindy?
Mr. Chairman, it is just under $9 million.
Cindy, do you remember on the PP&E for 2016, how much the county was reimbursed by the state to pull off that election? Do you remember?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Hickman, I do not remember. We'll get that number.
How much were you reimbursed by the state for the presidential primary election?
We're usually, I don't know, they usually do not give us a 100% fully reimbursement. They give us a partial one, but that number, it never gets a 100% reimbursement. That I don't know.
What's that?
I think it was about a third.
A third?
Okay.
Then we do a leadership?
No.
Maybe, now that we have a leadership, maybe,
Yeah, if it were mine, it would have been 80%.
You'll say you're so short at 80%.
Yeah.
I think you can do more than that.
Supervisor Hickman, the elections office was estimating that it would be about $2.8 million. So, the Treasurer's Office lease operating budget is recommended at $6.9 million. This includes funding for 6 new positions at $678,000. It also includes moving the separate postage budget into their base operating budget for for $559,000 and $158,000 for Microsoft Premier support. These are all part of their operating budget. The county superintendent of schools budget for the general fund is remaining flat at $2.8 million, and their grant and special revenue fund budgets total $18.4 million. Environmental services budget is at $9.5 million in the general fund, and it includes funding for 6 new vector control foggers in their operating budget, as well as a $100,000 appropriation for OET data storage. Beyond that, they have a grant and special revenue fund budgets that total $29 million. The planning and development general fund budget is at $1.2 million, and it includes an additional $100,000 to assist with the updating of the area plans, and their special revenue fund budgets total $12.3 million. Facilities management budget is increasing by $1.3 million on the general fund side. They're adding 3 positions, and then the utilities and operational costs for the startup year of the 225 Madison building. So their total general fund operating budget is at $37.5 million. In addition, they have funding for major maintenance of $7.9 million, court elevator renovations at $4.5 million, and there's some one-time funding for IT support at $151,000. In the detention fund, the budget is also increasing $1.3 million on the operating side, again adding some positions for the operation and maintenance of the building, as well as the utilities and operational costs of the ITR. And the major maintenance budget in detention is $6.7 million. Emergency management, the general fund is set at $3.2 million in the recommended budget, and it includes increases for 4 new staff, 3 of which would man the 225 West Madison building, and 1 staff would be a rover that could support any of the buildings that the security specialists monitor. In addition to that, they have a detention fund budget of $49,000 and a special revenue fund budget of $1.9 million. The county's transportation department has a general fund budget of $112,000 that remained relatively flat year over year. Their transportation fund budget, though, is going up 13%. It's $85.4 million. It includes $3 million for additional vehicles, $3.1 million for repairs and maintenance, and $2.2 million for other services. In addition, their non-recurring budget is set at $64.7 million, with funding for technology and major maintenance, as well as a large transfer from the transportation fund to the transportation capital fund. Capital improvement plan for fiscal year 20 is set at $113 million. The 5-year plan is $556 million, and some major projects that are going to be taking place in fiscal year 20 are the Highway 85 and the Northern Parkway projects. The county manager's general fund budget will be set at $4.5 million. It includes $23,000 for additional funding in the communications area, primarily to participate in the census. And in addition to that, there are 3 new positions coming on board for our continuous improvement initiative, for a total of $308,000 for the positions and $11,000 for the supplies.
And I just want to, sorry for interrupting, Cindy, just want to comment on that. Joy, thank you for your work on that. I personally believe that with these 3 new positions, that will lead to much more in savings as a county, plus allowing us to push forward and becoming more innovative and more support for Josue and all the great work that he's doing. So thanks for your leadership on this, Joy. Really appreciate that.
In addition, we have $250,000 for the county's identity project consultant, and then there was a $457,000 reduction to the county manager's budget. I believe Myra talked about earlier, funds going to both the county attorney's office and the public defense services for transcription and translation.
And Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. I know it's a small number compared to the big picture here, but when it comes to communications and their efforts on the whole census project, I mean, that's huge implications to the county and our state, and whatever we can do from a county perspective to help just drive out the importance of folks participating. You know, we're all busy in our day-to-day lives and, you know, with our families and our private lives and public and our jobs. That it's important to remind the importance of it, because you're talking a lot of federal resources that can come down to the county to help cover some of the services that was mentioned even prior. As the county continues to grow, the demand on services are even larger. So in a sense, it just plays just a key role in it. And then let's not mention the political power that we have in Washington as well.
Great point.
Animal care and control. So the general fund budget for animal care and control is at $911,000, and this is going to include a $152,000 increase for enforcement in unincorporated Maricopa County. In addition, there's $155,000 set aside for new vehicles for field operations. The shelter fund budget is going to be at $16 million for fiscal year 20, and that does include a transfer in on the revenue side of $1.5 million from the general fund for the shortfall in the fees to support this fund. In addition, the shelter fund is receiving a one-time infusion of $638,000 because for fiscal year 20, the shelter and enforcement funds have been combined into one, so the fund balances are being combined. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Myra.
The Human Services General Fund operating budget is recommended at $2.5 million, which is 6.7% or a $154,000 increase. Included are $152,000 for homeless coordination operating increase, $201,000 for transfer of funding for long-term care, $70,000 for funding the administration of the paratransit program. General fund contingency of $1.2 million is also set aside for paratransit program services. The Human Services Grant Fund budget totals $50.8 million and includes $645,000, which is planned to be transferred from the general fund to the Human Services Grant Fund to cover the shortfall in grant funded for overhead and indirect costs. The Enterprise Technology General Fund operating budget is recommended at $33 million, and that is a decrease of less than 1% or $52,000. The decrease is mostly due to baseline telecom and risk charges. Included are data center leases for negative $1.3 million, VMware Enterprise license agreement for $1.6 million, Firewall SmartNet for $456,000, FireEye maintenance renewal for $416,000, and other software and service increase of $759,000. The detention fund operating budget is recommended at $1 million, which is a 1.5% or $16,000 increase that is mostly due to base telecom and retirement contributions. There is also one-time funding recommended for desktop laptop replacement of $11.7 million, digital county initiatives such as on-base software upgrade, e-signature, and SharePoint document transition to the cloud for $1.5 million, and Microsoft 365 migration of $1.1 million.
Is that accurate then, on the digital county initiative, that gets us in the direction we need to be getting to hit that all digital county by 2022 goal?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Great.
The fiscal year 2020 capital funds recommended budget is $296.9 million. Public safety has the largest use of capital funds, or 44.45%, or $132 million, and that includes projects such as the Madison Street Jail adaptive reuse and the intake transfer release jail. Highways and streets is the next largest category with 38.2%, or $114 million for all of the McDowell projects. The third largest is the other category for 12.83%, or $38 million, and includes projects such as the Computer Aid Mass Appraisal System, also known as CAMA, Enterprise Resource Planning System, Treasurer System Upgrade, and the 301 Admin Building Renovation. The next largest category is culture and recreation for 3.04% or $9 million, and that includes all of the parks projects. Finally, the health, welfare, and sanitation category for 1.47% or $4.4 million, and includes funding for the East Valley Animal Care Facility. A total of $46.2 million of continuing technology capital projects are recommended in fiscal year 20. The Public Safety Radio Refresh Project received $12.2 million of additional funding. The projects with the largest fiscal year 20 funding are the Public Safety Radio Refresh for $7.9 million, Radio System Project for $14 million, and the Treasurer's Technology System Upgrade for $6.4 million. There is a $10.5 million reserved for the Treasurer System Upgrade, of which $2.7 would be available for appropriation in fiscal year 20.
Question on that one.
Supervisor Hickman.
So we've broken that apart, so explain that to me, the Treasurer System Upgrade Project Reserve versus the Treasurer Technology System Upgrade. So are we basically saying that, because we've budgeted $35 million, $35.6 million, now we're putting basically in reserve an extra $10 million to complete the project? So tell me how you guys are setting that up, because it looks like that's very nice. It's very transparent to me. So, and I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. So tell me how we can keep an eye on that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Hickman. The requested additional funding for the ULTIS project of the $10.5 million is going to be set aside in a reserve specific for the project. But what we're asking is that our CIO, Ed Winfield, engage with the Treasurer's Office to develop a process for a project health check and reviews, and then have reporting quarterly back to the board on how the project is progressing. So the money then could move from the project reserve to the project only with board approval. So there'll be like milestones that will need to be met, then the funding can be taken out of reserve and moved into the project with an action item by the board. Of the $10.5 million that's set aside to complete the project, 2.7 would be available for appropriation during fiscal year 20.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor
Yeah,
Gallardo.
again, yeah, I agree with Supervisor Hickman here. Not only, I think it's important for us to kind of get a better understanding of where we're at. I said it before, I'm not an IT person. I rely on our experts to kind of guide us, or guide me at least. But I think even more importantly, taking a step back and looking at the first, was it $35 million? Where did that go? What happened here? I mean, that was initially the thought. It was clear that they made it clear that, you know, they misinterpreted, or they misrepresented of what the actual cost was going to be, that they anticipated it would be a little bit more. But I think going back, and maybe it's something that we talked to Joy and our IT folks, you know, what happened to the $35 million? How did we fall short, which I think I know, and being real careful on the 10.5 and how we move forward with that. I wouldn't mind even just moving it over into a separate area where if there's another department that can utilize the 10.5, I be open to listening to those types of recommendations as well. But nonetheless, I do support the idea of putting it in a reserve.
Anything else on that item?
That's the plan forward, correct, Mr. Chair?
Correct. Yes.
Still have that mechanism set up, which isn't unlike any other mechanism. I mean, this is our third major tech upgrade as a county. So I don't anticipate any problems with that with the treasurer, because I think it's meaningful and the right way we should go.
Yep, and I was in contact with the treasurer last week, and I think he understands the intent of this moving forward, and I agree with you. I think this is consistent with how other projects have been handled, and it's the right way to do it. We need to be aware of what's going on and have the experts, as Supervisor Gallardo said, having a view and the transparency to what's going on this important project.
If there's anything wrong with it, Cindy, just let the chairman know.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, going back, I'm thinking back, didn't we have the same mechanism on the first half of it, where we had our IT folks, and and a team of smart people looking at how to implement this. Did we not have that before?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Guerrero, I think what we're looking at now is a deeper dive and more of an intense look under the hood. I think for a period of time, you all received updates from the Treasurer's Office, written updates, and there was a group of folks that got together to get those updates. I think instead of just receiving the information, that now our CIO will be more proactive in getting involved in making sure that, there's a good health check going on for the project.
All right.
A total of $85.5 million of continuing facilities and capital projects are recommended in fiscal year 20. The projects with the largest fiscal year 20 funding are the Intake Transfer Release Jail for $31.9 million and the Madison Street Jail Adaptive Reuse for $30.2 million. Both of these projects will be completed within fiscal year 20. The projects that receive new funding are the East Valley Animal Care and Control Facility. They received $3.6 million. Equipment Services Fuel Stations, Durango, $490,000. And Southeast Regional Justice Center at Mesa, $16.8 million. There are $42.2 million of new facility capital projects recommended in fiscal year 20. The 301 Administration Building renovation budget for fiscal year 20 is recommended at $12.3 million. The Maricopa County Fuel Station's recommended budget is $1.5 million. The MCSO substation at Avondale campus is recommended at $21 million. And the Superior Court Central Building, 12th floor, is recommended for $7.4 million.
Myra, you're not nervous, are you? All right, so the 71 million for this building, is that with the former county attorney space, right? Rehabbing that?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Tukri, yeah, rehabbing that and our common spaces as well.
Right, okay.
Essentially backfilling and restacking, and frankly, in a lot of areas, going to a new model of providing staffing spaces.
Okay.
Right, and as a reminder, we have all these folks coming from leased space who are going to be coming in here, so we got to get everything ready for them.
And Reed knows how to squeeze every ounce of it out of a dollar.
Promise.
All right.
$9 million of PARD capital projects are recommended in fiscal year 20. Of these projects, $4.6 million is carry forward funding and $4.5 million is new funding. There is $500,000 of new funding for Vulture Mountain. There are an estimated $1.07 billion of unfunded safety projects. The largest of these projects are the Jails Master Plan, Courts Master Plan, Parks Master Plan, and the MCSO substations.
What are county, excuse me.
Supervisor Sellers.
What are county-wide security issues?
We can't say that.
Oh.
Can't tell you. It's security.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor, we can have that, maybe that's a good topic for one of my Monday morning briefings.
Yeah.
The public safety retirement system rate increased while all other public safety plans decreased. Retirement contributions from the general and detention funds are increasing by $1.3 million. And rates are expected to increase to address funded status and outcome of litigation.
And this is a bit timely. In today's paper, there was a op-ed piece by an individual talking about our pension systems and across the state, and just a good reminder that we need to continue to work with partners across the state to shore these up as much as we possibly can.
The budgeted regular full-time equivalent positions for the county in fiscal year 20 is 14,131, which is an increase of 0.38% or 54 FTEs from the fiscal year 2019 adopted budget. The 14,131 include changes made during fiscal year 19, as well as additions and deletions for fiscal year 20. There are variances in almost every department. The largest changes from a decrease perspective are human services with 26 less FTEs, public health with 24.35 less FTEs. Both of these areas are due to grant reductions and the reallocations of positions to the county's HR department. Medical examiner also had a 13 FTE decrease. Departments where there are large increases include county attorney at 37.25 positions over their adopted budget in fiscal year 19, and CSO with an additional 29 positions,
Reduction.
and the treasurer's office with an increase of 10.9 FTEs above their 2019 adopted budget. Fiscal year 2020 will have 531 less FTEs than fiscal year 2009.
Do we have a rough number on actual FTEs today?
Phil, do you mean?
Yeah, filled.
Mr. Chairman, it's 13,000 change. I don't know, I think we probably have vacancies of almost 1,000, don't we?
Yeah, I believe so. We can get that though. Okay, so I think we're almost at the end. All right, so to summarize our fiscal year 20 budget, it's based on a flat tax rate. It maintains structural balance on all the county's major funds, and because of the structural balance, we believe it's sustainable based on forecasted revenues. It retains our 2 months reserves based on prior operating expenses in both the general and detention funds. It funds the mandatory retirement costs. It provides a full year's worth of funding for the operational costs of the new facilities that are coming on board in fiscal year 20. It reserves funding for new election equipment. It provides the necessary resources to deal with criminal justice issues, including an increase for funding for the compliance with the Melendrez order. It also provides additional CIP funding for the East Valley Animal Shelter and the Southeast Justice Center, and brings on new projects such as the Avondale Substation and the County Administration Building. It continues to support our IT and infrastructure and enhancement to our parks. Funding of 5% is included and will be available to department leadership to balance compensation issues, which could include pay for performance and market issues. We believe the budget as recommended is sustainable and a responsible plan to support the needs of Maricopa County. It includes operational resources as well as funding for infrastructure necessary to provide services to our customers and our citizens. As with any plan, we will need to monitor this and measure our performance against our assumptions and make adjustments if needed. Okay, so, what's left? Here we go. So what remains on the budget calendar is that today the board is scheduled to adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 20. And we will be back then on June 24th for a public hearing on the budget and the final budget adoption. August 19th is the date for the tax rate and levy setting. So that would conclude the budget process in fiscal year 20. I'd like to thank Joy and Shelby for all their support and guidance during this process and recognize the people who are sitting in the back of the room. Without them, the budget office staff, we wouldn't be able to have this recommendation for you today. So that concludes the budget presentation for the county, and we welcome any questions.
Right, Cindy and Myra, great presentation, great job. Would have never known it was your first time, so fantastic. With that, open it up to any questions from my colleagues. Any additional questions from my colleagues?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gallardo.
Thank you. First of all, great job, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your work. I know your team, Laura and Zach, wherever they're at, I can see them, but they work real hard as well. And Cindy and your whole group too. I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. I'll never forget, I think it was one of my first years, came down here, it was around 10 at night, and I came to do an interview in front of the sheriff's office. Anyway, I came in at 10 o'clock at night, and I parked in my spot here. And as I was coming across, your team was leaving for the day at 10 o'clock at night. That just shows you how much work is put in and the dedication that your whole staff has when it comes to preparing this budget. But with that, one question in regards to the county attorney's office. I know we had a brief discussion about this as well, and that's the 4.5 million that is being put aside for 40 new positions. I think according to this, it's 11 staff members, 13 attorneys to address body cam evidence, and I'm okay with that. I think that's what's needed. That's needed. The flip side comes to the public defender side, and that's where we're putting $2 million. I believe in a contingency fund in anticipation that they're going to have a workload. Help me understand why, in my mind, if the prosecuting side is getting a certain amount, the public defender side should have equal access to the same amount of dollars. How did we determine only $2 million for public defenders, and why in a contingency fund versus $4.5 million for the county attorney's office?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gallardo. So for the county attorney's side, the number of staff that they're requesting are not all attorneys. So they're requesting staff for some other areas as well, some of their administrative areas, some detectives, staff for inside their 225 building. So the total increase that they're anticipating for attorneys is 13. They're repurposing funds inside their budget for 5 of those positions, and then they're refunding for 8 new ones. So there'll be 13 new positions. The $2.3 million that we have set aside in contingency is, I believe, the equivalent of the same 13 positions that would occur on the public defense side, as well as some support for them. And they indicated that they wanted to, before getting that money in their budget, that they would rather see how the caseloads would grow and then make those adjustments as needed once they saw if their workload did indeed increase once the county attorney had new staff.
And that's fine. I mean, if that's their desire, right? I can't express the importance of making sure that we have equal scales of justice here, that we're not just loading one side and not the other. And I know that's not the intent of anyone, but we just have to be mindful that, if you pay one side, chances are the other side is going to be hit with the same or similar amount of work. The other thing I hope, if not in this budget, maybe in a future budget, we do look at some type of pay disparity between the public defender's office and the county attorney's office. I think it's important. They're doing the same work. And to say that one side should get a little bit more, and maybe that's something that we can dig into later, but to say that one side should get paid a little bit more than the other side, it's just not fair. It's just not fair. And particularly when they're doing pretty much the same job. And I would venture out to say that the public defender's office is doing a little bit more because they don't have all the investigative work that has already been done beforehand, and they're having to start from scratch when they get a case in front of them. So I just want to note that and just make sure as we move forward, make sure we're pretty balanced when it comes to providing funding for both agencies.
Other questions, concerns, comments?
Mr. Chairman, it's never easy to put these budgets together, and I applaud you for your hard work. And I think, as we continue to grow, and I was showing you the numbers, that if you look at our second competitor, which is Nevada, it's a Clark County in Nevada, we're growing at 70% more than they are. So this is going to be continued success. I think for the county, as the fastest growing county in America, I don't see us slowing, which is going to put more demands on this. I don't think these binders can get any bigger, but they likely will. And I just came out of a conference this past week in our board meeting where your economic numbers tie up with what we're seeing in our forecast as a restaurant industry. And that is that we're going to have 18 more months of, I think, some good growth as a country. And then we'll see what happens. So congratulations to you and your team. Cindy, Myra, welcome. Jump in, the water's freezing. This is great. I think to be able to do what we're doing with keeping this rate flat is something to applaud and to celebrate. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Good investment into our workforce as well.
Yes. Well, the one comment, thanks for the nice comments, and for the team, and to Laura and Zach, thanks for all your work on this, and all the chiefs. But this is my first opportunity to be chair on a budget, and I have that much greater of an appreciation for the work that our former chairs have done in this role. There's a lot involved here. Obviously, all the folks that that report up to Joy and then all of our countywide electeds as well. But a great process and collaborative by everyone involved. And I just want to thank everybody who did that. Everyone rolls their sleeves up, and we're all rowing in the same direction, which is to continue to maintain Maricopa County as best in class. So with that, I would entertain a motion with respect to this budget.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to also concur with all the statements. Fine job as well. I know it's difficult. Cindy and your team, thank you for that. You guys keep us, your staff, Cindy, Joy, you've kept us updated as this has progressed. These are some of the largest decisions that we make, setting the tax rate and property tax levy. So great job as chairman. Thank you for everything you did. I know you worked extremely hard on it. Phone calls
Thank you.
late in the afternoon on different things. So thank you for all your hard work, and Laura and Zach as well. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the fiscal year 2020 tentative budget in the amount of $2,573,762. Jeez, it's good that these numbers are big. $3,762,798. That's the important. By total appropriation for each department, fund, and appropriation unit group listed in the attached schedules. Also adopt the 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2020 through 2024, and approve the attached executive summary.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Hickman, second by Supervisor Gallardo. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, that motion passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to agenda item number 3 regarding setting the public hearings for truth in taxation and a special meeting regarding the Maricopa County 2020 budget.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we set the public hearing on the budget, the truth in taxation hearing, and a special meeting for June 24th, 2019 as outlined and described in the agenda, and give notice that tax levies and tax rates will be set by this board Monday, August 19th, 2019.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Supervisor Sellers. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion passes unanimously as well. Now we'll recess as the Board of Supervisors and convene as the improvement districts. And the documents regarding these districts are included in the backup materials where each district is listed along with the associated district assessment or estimated tax rate. Cindy?
Oh, there's no presentation.
Okay.
So
there it is.
Improvement districts.
Look at the pretty pictures, right?
Okay, so no presentation with those. Okay, I move that we approve the fiscal year 2020 tentative budgets for all of the special districts and improvement districts as described by the agenda and per the budget request as listed on the attachment. And then we set the public hearing on the budgets and a special meeting for June 24th, 2019 as outlined and described in the agenda.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Hickman. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Supervisor Gallardo. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes unanimously as well. Now we'll adjourn as the improvement districts and convene as the flood control district to consider the tentative budget and set the hearing dates for the adoption of the final budget. Cindy?
we have a very brief presentation. One slide.
There's that pretty picture again.
So the flood control district, the overall budget is recommended at $123.2 million. It is also based on a flat tax rate, so the levy would be $70.9 million. The CIP for 2020 is at $85.3 million, and the overall 5-year CIP for the flood control district is recommended at $407.6 million.
Okay, excellent presentation.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the fiscal year 2020 flood control district tentative budget in the amount of $123,171,290 by total appropriation for each fund and appropriation unit group of the flood control district. And that we set the public hearing on the budget, the truth and taxation hearing, and a special meeting for June 24th, 2019 as outlined and described in the agenda for the flood control district.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that motion, Supervisor Hickman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you very much, Supervisor Chukri. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. We'll now adjourn as the Flood Control District and convene as the Library District to consider the tentative budget and set the hearing dates for the adoption of the final budget. Cindy?
Okay, so the library district, the overall expenditures are recommended at $34.1 million. Again, they're also recommended having a flat tax rate, so the levy would be $24 million for the library district in fiscal year 20.
Excellent. Do I have a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the fiscal year 2020 library district tentative budget in the amount of $34,069,155 by total appropriation for each fund and appropriation unit group of the library district. That we also set the public hearing on the budget, the truth and taxation hearing, and a special meeting for June 24th, 2019, as outlined and described in the agenda for the library district.
All right, we have a motion from Supervisor Hickman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Supervisor Sellers. Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, that motion passes. And now we'll adjourn as the Library District and convene as the Stadium District to consider the tentative budget and set the hearing dates for the adoption of the final budget. Cindy?
Okay, so the stadium district budget for fiscal year 2020 is recommended at $250,000. And we had the debt service that was retired at the end of fiscal year, or will be retired at the end of fiscal year 2019. So the only revenues and expenses moving forward are $250,000 a year.
Excellent. Very little there. Very little there to consider, thanks to the leadership of Supervisor Chukri. Yeah. No, I mean, there's little expenditures.
There's no leadership.
You know what I mean, yes.
Second your motion.
If I ever make it. I move that we approve the fiscal year 2020 Stadium District tentative budget in the amount of $250,000 by total appropriation for each fund and appropriation unit group of the Stadium District, and that we set the public hearing on the budget, the truth and taxation hearing, and a special meeting for June 24th, 2019, as outlined and described in the agenda for the Stadium District.
All right. Thank you very much for the motion, Supervisor Hickman.
Still want a second?
Thank you for the second, Supervisor Chukri. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Now we will adjourn as a Stadium District and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. I would entertain a motion to convene an executive session.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Chukri. I think that was a second from Supervisor Gallardo. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. We will go into executive session. Thank you so much for all your hard work.